Morning, everybody. My name is Simon Baptist. I'm the Chief Economist for the Economist Intelligence Unit. I'm based in Singapore, but very happy to be able to come up to Hong Kong again to participate in another year of Pride and Prejudice here. As Charlie said, one thing that we're really wanting to focus on this year is to get the perspectives of different generations in this debate. You'll be pleased to know I'm not the only Generation Z person here today. There are a few others who are going to be joining us, and we will be trying to get some views from different generations and trying to understand how are things evolving and what are the different levers that we can pull in terms of pushing this debate forward, particularly thinking about the Asian context, which of course is very different to the context that we have when we do these events in Europe or in North America. I mean, in Asia, I guess we could say, unfortunately, we're still really very focused on some more basic kind of rights and concerns when it comes to LGBT, things like freedom from violence, being able to live with your partner, being able to get a job and not be discriminated. Not be discriminated against, and to have sort of any forms of legal protection. For us here, I guess marriage is kind of, or relationship recognition is on the cutting edge of where most countries in Asia are kind of hoping to be. Whereas, of course, in Europe and North America, that debate is at a different stage. So we have, I think, a different set of issues to think about in Asia. But I would say in many ways, they're really more important issues because if you can't hold a job or you don't have freedom from violence, then of course having whether you can get married or not becomes a second stage concern. But we're hoping that Asia is going to make progress on all of these fronts. Today we want to have the discussion about what we think the people in this room can do, maybe assessing where we're at, and then thinking about where we can go to move things forward. So we wanted to start today by having a panel with some people who are involved in the younger generation. I'd like to welcome up Kayla Wong, who's the founder of the ethical fashion brand Basics for Basics, and also Linka Lin, who's in charge of youth economic empowerment at UNDP. Please join me in welcoming them up to the stage. Great. Good to see you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Hey. So we know that, of course, millennials and Generation Z can have different outlooks on LGBT inclusion. There's technology, social enterprise, social media, greater connectedness mean that the interactions between that generation and the way they interact with the public debate can be quite different, particularly when it comes to empowerment. So empowerment can be maybe easier with greater communications. Perhaps it can also be a challenge because maybe your opponents can be empowered, or it can make it harder to have private spaces, which have always been very important for LGBT people in Asia. So in this discussion, I'd like to think about how do these technological and new communication channels affect the LGBT debate? What's the role of social entrepreneurship? What can business learn from these debates, and then how can we go mainstream? How can we go mainstream with the kind of values that social entrepreneurship is trying to push? Kayla, if I can begin with you. So you've built an ethical business in Hong Kong. At the same time, you have been one of the more prominent advocates here for LGBT and related issues.
Right.
How have you found that social media has influenced the debate around LGBT, particularly when it comes to younger people in Hong Kong?
So I think the younger people, Generation Z and Millennials per se, they are a lot more progressive in their thinking because of the internet age. They were born into an age where they got to obtain information that, normally back then they wouldn't be exposed to. Mm-hmm. So they, through social media, they're able to learn a lot more, and they're able to connect with people who are similar to them. And so I feel like there is a bigger crowd of people who don't feel as if they are an outcast. They feel like there is a group of people out there who they can relate to. And also in that sense, I think they do feel more empowered to stand up and speak out for what they believe in. But I feel like in Asia, it is still kind of a taboo because of our culture. We are taught to stay quiet in a lot of times, and we fear that there is going to be kind of a backlash. So I think that is something that we can think about is how can we push the younger generation to stand out and kind of do something about what they are thinking. I think it really comes from the workplace, or support from family. That's really important. So I think being in the workplace, it's really about education and really trying to get them to grow into their own person and kind of help them evolve and help them stand up and talk about these issues that are important to them.
Do you think that social media makes it easier or harder to celebrate difference? Because I guess on one hand there can be a sort of a conforming pressure from social media. You want to be part of the whole, part of the group, and maybe you don't want to stand out so much. I guess on the other hand, it can also give you a maybe a less confrontational place for expression, doing it online rather than in person.
Right. I think in the day and age we live in now, I think being different is celebrated in a way, because through social media, we are able to create different identities, and we're able to kind of showcase a different side of us where we normally probably wouldn't show in real life. You can say that that might be kind of an escape, but for a lot of people, that is a channel to really be themselves or really kind of show other people that this is what they're about. And I think for young people, it's a creative space. It gives them the opportunity to explore and to really connect with other people who have different views, and I think there is a greater chance of linkage with people in the sense where you can really kind of connect and learn from other people.
So we've got a lot of people in the room from Hong Kong, but also some people from not Hong Kong.
Right.
So not everybody here, some people here may not be familiar with the work that you've done or what your experiences have been as an advocate in Hong Kong. I wonder if you could just share with us how you have found the experience of being an LGBT advocate in Hong Kong, and then maybe how you think about using social media or new forms of communication in your advocacy.
Yeah, so I kind of came out to the public in the media 3 years ago. I was kind of pushed into it because my parents have a certain background, and the media was very much on me regarding, my sexuality. And so I kind of grew up in a more open space. 2 years prior to that, I already came out to my parents. And I went to school in LA. I had an influence of a different perspective. I was surrounded by people who are more open-minded, who were more accepting. So at that point, when I was facing the media, I felt like I wasn't really coming out. I felt like I was just admitting to a truth. And that is something that was very surprising to a lot of people, because in Hong Kong, they still have this idea that you have to come out of the closet. And this is something that is different with Generation Z, I feel like. We actually, 2/3 don't really identify with any label. And that is something that I kind of stand by as well. I just believe in people should love who they're able to love. And so from then on, I kind of use my platform on social media to talk more and explore more on these topics, because I feel like at the end of the day, the media is influencing us, but at the same time, we're influencing the media. So actually, the more I talk about it, I feel like the more the Hong Kong media is talking about it as well. Versus before, maybe they were more quiet about it, they were more reserved about it, but I feel like recently, with the same-sex marriage being legalized in Taiwan, we actually also did a celebration in Hong Kong just this past, it was a couple days ago. And they actually were able to really report about it in a very positive way. And they were really straightforward about it, which I'm actually glad that I feel like we're moving in the right direction. There's still a lot that we can do, especially with brands and corporates and companies, because I think it all starts with how we are able to present new ideas to a city where maybe there's still a little bit of uncertainty. And with those ideas presented, we can keep things moving forward and the ball can keep rolling.
Do you find a difference in the way that advocacy happens or the way that people react to advocacy in an online environment versus an offline environment?
I think, like I said before, I think definitely on an online environment, people are more prone to speaking out and saying what they really want to say, where, no matter if it's positive or negative. So, sometimes you do get a lot of backlash because people tend to, throw out a lot of hate when they're online because they feel like there's no barrier. So you kind of have to gauge, where you want to stand, like if you want to be very extreme or if you want to kind of stay neutral. There's definitely, it can be very harsh on the internet. So I think there's, I think with the ad that with Catholic Pacific, there was definitely a huge debate online and people really wanted to get their voices out. And, but it's a good way to, I think, really kind of gain that knowledge and put together all the ideas and put together all the comments that people have and try and see how we can do better and how we can create a solution that is for all people.
Okay. So, Linka, I'd like to bring you in at this point. So, Kayla's spoken a bit about how, I guess, the online world can empower people to get more engaged, and sometimes in a positive and sometimes in a less positive way, depending on the platform and the perspectives. Now, very relevant for, I guess, an Economist event and the audience here today, you work in youth economic empowerment at UNDP. So I'm wondering if you could start off by telling us what does it mean to be economically empowered,
Sure.
particularly for the context of LGBT youth in Asia?
Sure. So I'm going to invite all of us to take a few seconds to step outside of this room, not physically, but mentally, to take a look at this region. So in UNDP, we cover 36 countries in Asia Pacific, including Pacific Islands, like Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, and those island countries. So in this region, there are 700 million of young people, and among them, 220 million of them are not at school, not in employment, or not in a training or preparation for work. So there are in a lot of countries, young people doesn't have space for them to be engaged with social or economic development. So in those countries where young people don't have their space, most of the time they get lost or they're very frustrated. They don't know what to do. So that causes some sort of social issues. And even in the more mature or more developed region or countries, young people are looking for a space to innovate, to create, and also to disrupt, because sometimes we're not satisfied with the solutions that are coming from the previous generations. We want to create our own solutions. So with that, in UNDP and also under this background, we have Youth Collab, our youth economy empowerment project, primarily engaging young people how to, instead of waiting for solutions for them, how can they be the leader? How can they be the solutions provider? And so social entrepreneurship is is approach that we engage with young people. So instead of just talk about it, why don't we create some solutions? Why don't we take actions? Why don't we create a product or services that not just creating jobs for the people similar like us, but also to create some social impact. So that's what we do in UNDP to empower young people through social entrepreneurship, and also to unleash the power of young people in this region.
And have you found any differences in how that process works for LGBT youth versus non-LGBT youth?
So last year when we were in Vietnam, for example, we've done an innovation challenge that we brought in LGBTI youth with disabilities, and also with youth with HIV. So we've run design thinking. We asked them to come up with the solutions for themselves. So there was a platform that they created to where young people with LGBTI background, they can find jobs on that. They can ask for support. They can ask and communicate and network on that. So I think that's very empowering example where young people create solutions for themselves. So I think this approach, this intervention is the same with all the young people in this region, that the solution coming for themselves, created by themselves.
So you gave the example of Vietnam. Actually, I wonder if that's a good moment for us to think about how things differ around the Asia-Pacific region. Are there certain countries or certain areas where you think that there is kind of a bigger push amongst the younger LGBT population to be empowered, to be engaged, to make a difference? And where are the places where they face the bigger challenges?
Right, so there's another good example from Pakistan. So in Pakistan, we work with a National Incubation Center. It's a government-private sector joint initiative to promote and support entrepreneurship. So there's a very strong push from this center on transgender entrepreneurs. So this year, together with UNDP, we're going to mainstream, also focus on transgenders entrepreneurs empowerment. So I would say that it's a very strong push from that angle. Yes, from Pakistan.
And do you think there's any, what's the best way for bigger businesses to engage with some of these activities that are happening and the social entrepreneurship? I mean, we have today some people from some of, I guess some of the world's biggest companies, or some very large and very important organizations. If they're hearing your stories about the social entrepreneurship around the region, what UNDP is doing to leverage that, how might they get involved to scale that up?
Right, so we have, in our project, we have 3 levels of engagement. The first level is with young people primarily. We provide them with skills training, networking, and also mentorship. But then also we have second level of engagement with partners and big organizations, private sectors, academia, where we mainstream inclusiveness in youth entrepreneurship sector. And then also the last level of engagement is with the government. As intergovernmental agency, we collected feedback from beneficiaries and from partners. How can we improve our policy or improve the implementation of the policy to make youth entrepreneurship easier for everyone in this ecosystem? So there are 3 levels of engagement that we work in this area.
Okay. Kayla, can I come back to you on that one as well, this question about scale? So,
right.
You've been involved obviously in your own, sort of enterprise in terms of fashion, but also social entrepreneurship in terms of advocacy.
Yes.
What do you think can be done in the broader socio-economic environment, be it by government, by business, by other actors, to scale up some of the activities that are happening?
Well, I think one of the biggest pushes that I saw was, again, with the Cathay Pacific ad, because when you have such a big ad that is kind of placed everywhere in the city, that really puts it in people's perspective. And your influence in people, you're letting them see, and in real life, that this is something that is part of the society. I think being visible and having a presence is very important for the LGBT plus community, because when people don't see it, they feel like we are still a minority, or we're still kind of hidden, or we should be hidden. So I think having ads, or like I said before, having companies and brands really kind of stand out and represent the community is very important, and that is something that can be scaled up and can really make a difference in the representation of the community and the society.
I'm going to be coming to the audience soon to bring you in for the opportunity to ask Kayla and Linka any questions or to respond to anything you've had. So do start thinking about any questions or comments that you'd like to make. Linka, so on thinking about the future in Asia, so the next kind of 10 and a bit years sort of out to 2030, how do you think the experiences of Generation Z are going to be different in 10 years to how they are now?
Yes, so speaking of 2030, I think maybe some of us are familiar with Sustainable Development Goals, 17 Sustainable Development Goals primarily driven by United Nations. So what we're trying to do is that we want to engage young people in part of this agenda, no matter what kind of business solutions they're doing or being entrepreneur or intrapreneur, they have this blueprint in their mind that what kind of future they're envisioned for. So I do say that I'm very hopeful and very positive of this generation.
And Kayla, what about from you? What changes do you expect to see through the sort of next 10 years from a Generation Z perspective? How do you think things might be different in 2030 for them?
Well, I do hope by then that the brands and the economic dynamic will be a lot more open to the ideas, and I think representation for us is the most important. You know, in ads and commercials, the media is very much the drive for change and for influence, and if there is no representation in the media, it is hard for people to grasp the idea that things are evolving and things are changing, and so I really hope by then, you know, brands and companies and the workplace, that there will be inclusivity for sure. Like, that's something that is not just a marketing strategy or not just something that they have to do because, you know, they have to include the minorities, but something that will become the norm. And we no longer will have to be a minority, but we're just going to be part of the society and just part of everybody.
It's an optimistic future, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we were just also talking about as entrepreneur, right? Kayla, you were able to, using this kind of entrepreneurship skills to bring the inclusiveness to your business.
Yeah, so I think with empowering youth, I think the best part is, for myself, when you do have different views and different values, you're able to use your own platform, use your own entrepreneurship to really push these ideas. So with my own brand, I'm very adamant about having equality and having inclusivity as part of our brand image. And we actually, every June, we do a Pride Month, and we also have a collection that is just for equality, and that is something that we really stand by, and I think is very important for brands to realize, like I said earlier, that it's not just a marketing strategy, but is part of the brand identity, and that is something that we should really focus on, is to making sure that we are, these values should be embedded in the brand identity and not just a one-time strategy thing.
Right. Speaking of that, and also I think there are a lot of report and research shows that social enterprises, in terms of employment, are more inclusive compared to traditional business.
Just coming out to the audience, anybody want to kick us off? Okay, we've got 3 questions. I'll start over here. If you just give us a 3-word intro to yourself, just your name and where you're from, and then into your question.
Hello, I'm Gigi Chow. I'm from Hong Kong. I have a question for both Linka and Kayla. So I myself also work with a lot of young people, and I'm quite familiar with Youth Collab and the work that you do. My question is really regarding the disconnect between governments and the young people today. So I was recently at a entrepreneurship conference in Hong Kong, and I see this great motivation by both the Hong Kong government and the regional governments that want to support the young people. So there's lots of funding, asking for good ideas, you know, again, networking opportunities, mentorship opportunities. But then I see the attendance of these things to be something that the young people or Gen Z people avoid like the plague. So how do you actually bridge this kind of not so cool and not so trendy space where there's governments, the Greater Bay Area, organizations, NGOs that want to throw funding, throw support at the young people actually not very much responding. And at the same time, you know, Kayla being the perfect example, I mean, you grew up in a very supportive family of LGBTI. Of course, you've had your own struggles as well, but you've had both parents that were very entrepreneurial. They were great role models in themselves. But for the other young people that are more disenfranchised socially, how would you envisage a way to build the ecosystem that you've very much enjoyed, the mentorship from your own inner circle, the encouragement from your peers and your elders? How do you think that this could be done by organizations like Youth Collab?
Right.
Well, I think regards to what I mentioned earlier, the youth in Hong Kong or the youth in Asia, we're still very much passive, I feel like. So there definitely needs to be somewhat almost like a reach of a hand. I think the government or, you know, all these NGOs, I think the entrepreneurs themselves do want these fundings. I think it's a matter of how do you kind of market these fundings to them to be like, you know, this is what you need and we can definitely help you. Because myself, one of the biggest concerns I have when it comes to funding is I feel like these big companies or government organizations won't really understand the core of what I'm doing or like why I'm doing, you know, why I'm standing up for all these different rights within the brand. This is something I feel like is hard for people to understand sometimes, and I get a little bit taken aback when people want to offer this kind of funding. So I feel like it is important for these organizations to let the younger generation know that we're here to help and we're supportive of your ideas, and you know, we're not just gonna give you the money and then kind of not give you any guidance. I think the guidance is very important, and especially with the youth in Asia, because like I said, we're very passive, and we do need that kind of push and pull to bring us out of our shell. So I think that's kind of my perspective.
Thank you, Gigi, for the question. I think it's very true. We've done government to community dialogue in the Maldives before, and where we separated government in one table and young entrepreneurs in one table, and we asked them what do they think about the ecosystem. So the government rated themselves the highest as possible. They've done so much. They've provided money, they provided incubations, they provided training, and the young people was ranked the ecosystem as low as possible. They've done nothing, so we realize that there's a gap of communications.
Yeah.
One way cannot reach to the other the other side. So what we're trying to do, I think there are two things. The first thing is that in our work in UNDP Youth Collab, that we narrate strongly that young people are the leaders. So no matter what players are doing, no matter your government, your private sectors, your universities, young people are supposed to be the leader. They're supposed to be the one telling us what's the best for them. So that's something that we have been pushing for. The second thing is that we sort of acting like a facilitator role, trying to put all the players in one room and have them communicate with each other, to empathize with each other. So in our conference, we don't separate the government with young people. They have to do energizers together with us, or young people needs to have this sort of credibility to talk to the government. Why, for example, business registration is frustrating for them. So we're trying to bridge the gap between the government and young people with these two interventions.
Mm-hmm. Great, let's take the other two. I'll take both the two questions that we had, and then we'll take them both together. Yeah.
Thank you. Paul Arkwright from HR Magazine. My question will be shorter. We heard a lot about government intervention there. I'd like to bring it from the employer perspective and ask both the panelists, Kaya and Linka, what if you could give one piece of advice to those who are trying to champion D&I and LGBTQ plus issues within their own organization, but they're having a lot of resistance, okay? There's a lot of inertia in there, and there's a lot of tradition in there. What advice would you give to those people to better champion it and be more successful in creating that wave and positivity throughout the whole organization?
Great, and then we'll take a question from this table as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Guy Avila from Blackrock. I think it bridges actually quite well with this question. So mine is thinking about what has happened in Hong Kong in terms of corporations. Coming from Blackrock, seeing the names around here, those are companies that are headquartered elsewhere. And so I think one issue that's very much in the mind of Blackrock right now is how do we then engage with folks on the ground? How do we engage with firms that are headquartered here? Or corporations that are multinational but have a challenge in implementing those networks and initiatives for LGBT plus employees. So if you have any examples of firms that have done that successfully, I think we'd be eager to hear that.
Okay, so yeah, so a question about what advice would you give employers in general, and then I guess specifically, how can we get more Asian headquartered companies involved?
Thank you for both questions. I think what I would say is start small, because when it's such a controversial topic, there will be resistance or there will be debates about it. And if you start small, there's definitely going to be a group of people who will cling on to it, because there are LGBT plus people in every company, I believe, and they do want that support. They do want that support group. So I think even starting as a support group can be very helpful for the employees of the LGBT plus community. And with what the ground can do, actually, I've been approached recently by a fairly big insurance company recently, and what they're trying to do is they're going to throw a party for Pride Month in June. And so in that sense, it's actually in a way very positive, because it's presented as not a very, very, very political thing. It's a celebration. It's a fun thing for people in the company to join. But again, they're testing it out, and it's something that they're trying. And I guess it really starts with the one person or the two people who in the company are passionate about this. And when you are passionate and you try to push something within your company, I think it will definitely create a snowball effect if people appreciate the effort.
Mm-hmm. And Linka, I guess you've seen a lot of examples of things happening in different countries all around the region, the quite wide remit that you cover. I mean, a lot of those environments that the companies are working in aren't necessarily that supportive externally, right? So I guess it's one reason why we don't see so many Asian headquartered companies getting engaged. Have you got any examples of success or good practices that you've seen to overcome that?
I think from my work experience, I think what we realize is the effect of role model. No role model, not just individual role model, organizational role model as well. So if we engage, if we anchor one organizations, and then it's easier to spread the influences to other organizations as well. Right.
And what does it mean to be an anchor?
that you start with one organization.
Mhm.
Like same with what Kayla says, starts with something small, and then you have this rippling effect.
Okay, and there was another question somewhere in that direction. Here, yeah. The Manulife table. The microphone's just coming over. Anyone from this side want to be next in line? We've just got 3 minutes left, so we can maybe potentially squeeze in 2, or maybe this can be the last one.
Sean from Manulife. How do we as large companies support Generation Z disruption and inclusion that you mentioned, without distancing ourselves from the larger communities we operate in, where acceptance has been an issue, which is something else that came up earlier this morning?
Well, I think when you are supporting the LGBT plus community, you're not really just showing support to Generation Z or the Millennials. There are LGBT plus people who are from the older generation, and I think they're just more reserved when it comes to standing up for these rights. So I think when a big company comes out and supports these things, it's about finding that balance of presenting the idea, because, okay, for example, the Cathay Pacific ad. It is a very subtle poster. You have, 2 guys holding hands. They're not kissing. They're not doing anything that is too much of PDA. So it's, in that sense, I feel like you are kind of slowly easing the idea out there into the public and into, or even like your own company employees. And I think that's something that we can all think about, is really using your creative kind of ideas to push these ideas out there. I think it's important to remember that when you are supporting the LGBT plus community, you're, again, I repeat, you're not really supporting a minority. Like, you shouldn't think about it as supporting minority. It's about including everybody into your picture and into what you are trying to put out there, and that is, I think, the focus more so on, and not really kind of singling out the one community.
And Linka, do you have any responses to that? Or I said we're in our final couple of minutes, or just any other closing thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think in general, when speaking of innovation and speaking of something that that people don't get used to, is also creating a sense of security for this environment, that that people could be more open-minded and more inclusive for that. Right.
And Kayla, anything final from you?
Yeah, I think I just want to say lastly, linking to what Linka was saying earlier, is regarding the youth, I think it's really very much about empowerment. You want to empower the younger generation to be able to create change. And when it comes to change, I think it's important for us to realize that as a society, we are continuing to evolve, and that is something that we should embrace. And realize that we are our goal is to be equal across the board, whether it's LGBT plus, whether it's feminism or whatever. That's something that we, or maybe at me as a Generation Z person, that's something that we're championing for, and we really hope to see these changes rolling out. And it's very important that I think, big corporates and big companies really try and embrace that and push for that change as well.
Yeah, I think change is something most people here would like to get involved with and like to see happening. So rest of the day, we'll be focusing more on how we can get some change in some of the specific areas, different countries,
Right.
different sectors that we've already started raising here. So thanks so much for a great opening session. Thanks, Kayla. Thanks, Linka. Please join me in thanking them for their contributions.